It's a cold day in Iowa here. Maybe it's time to find something to do inside. Hey, my name's Corey Vanderplug, and today we're going to talk about cover crops. So, I've been meaning on making this video for a while now, and just kind of finally getting around to it. So, I'm from Northwest Iowa. First question most people ask me is how long you been growing that beard, and right at just about 13 months, 14 months now, so just over a year. So kind of what got me into cover crops. Been looking at trying to do some no-till corn. Just this last year we did quite a bit, just trying to get into that. When you start looking into that, then a lot of people are talking about cover crops and regenerative, sustainable, all those terms, carbon sequestration, all those things you hear. So what this video isn't going to be about, it's not going to be about all the benefits, cover crops. I mean, there's a lot of information out there about all that already. This is going to be about my experience with it this last year in 2020, and what I've done, just putting some information out there for everybody else to look at. Worked for me. I don't know if it'll work for you. From what I hear, if you want it to work, you can get it to work. So I planted rye in the fall of 19 after harvest. It was late. It was October 15th. Super muddy. Like the middle of the night. It had rained. We weren't combining. We thought I could go do it. So it was the middle of the night. I plugged the planter full of mud and only did 40 acres. Kind of gave up on it then after I started plugging row units up and stuff. I finished it up 2 days later. I tried to plant 6.5 inches from the cornstalk row. So, okay, I guess going back, my planter I used is a DB60 with wheat plates on 20-inch rows. So we do everything 20-inch rows: corn, beans, and I tried to be 6.5 inches over from the corn row when I put the wheat there, so that when I planted the beans I'd be 6.5 inches from that, and try and keep everything spaced that way. In the end, I don't know if that was the best decision. It's just real hard because you can't go half and still have room to go half again when you're going in there each time. So it worked out alright. It was just, I planted right next to that rye row. So once the corn stalks had kind of disintegrated, then there was more room over there where that corn stalk row was, and my bean row was closer to the rye row, if that makes any sense. So this video is pretty much just a collection of my pictures from the year. I wasn't really planning on doing this when I was just taking pictures for myself, but then I decided to put them all together into this video. Planted the soybeans April 22nd. The rye was really short, about 2 inches for the most part. I mean, some was bigger, some was smaller, but I'd say it had a fairly good stand. So there, I was pretty excited when the beans started poking through, and there you can see the spacing of how it's right next to the corn stalks, and everything's kind of tight in here with the rye row, the bean row, and the corn stalk row. So this is my first time ever planting rye or cover crops or anything like that. Been looking into it for the past couple of years, and this is the first time I decided to try it. I set the planter at 500,000 population. That kind of figured out to 56 pounds an acre. And then I cut it in half because I wanted to try a little bit less for some of it, but I didn't see much of a difference. Then May 22nd, the rye was about knee high. The soil was nice and soft. Everything looked really good. And we kept getting rain, so I wasn't real worried about it stealing moisture from the beans, because we kept getting enough rain. I did start to get a little nervous here when this rye was over waist high. Them beans were down in there, and that field looked like this. So I didn't plant it all with the planter like that. I did some with a broadcast fertilizer buggy. Went out there in March, there was just a little bit of snow and some terraces and stuff, but went out there and broadcast. Don't really know the rate. I'm guessing it was around 120 pounds. I mean, just from the buggy. So that stuff was knee high at the same time. It didn't get quite as good of a stand. You can see there were some streaks. I think this is mainly like combine residue from the corn. Didn't get the rye established as good. So at this time it got really hot, really windy. I don't remember the outside temperature, I guess, but it was probably around 100, something like that. And I took the thermal camera out and took some pictures here. So I put bigger numbers here up on the screen, but the soybeans in the you can see a little shadow of a rye there to the right, but the soybeans are at this 99.3 degrees, and right next to there you kind of see it gets out of the shadow. Between the rows there of the soybeans is 118 degrees. Then I went just down the road a little bit to the broadcast stuff, and it was kind of, yeah, 101 on the row there, 99 between the row, but it was just, yeah, it was right around that 100 degrees kind of everywhere. You know, you couldn't tell the difference between where the row was or in between the rows. Then just a little bit further down the road, this is full tillage ground, and on the row here the soybeans were 105. You can see there's very little residue left there. I think this was fall tilled and then spring tilled again with a high-speed disc. And you can see in the row that black soil, 128 degrees and windy, and those beans are just getting beat up. And look at what these beans look like just down here in this canopy, under the canopy of rye. So I finally decided to kill the rye. This is 44 days after the soybeans were planted. I sprayed the rye with just a Roundup. So these are dicamba beans, and across the fence I had non-dicamba beans, and the wind was blowing that way, so I couldn't spray the dicamba that day. And I don't know, I really wanted to get the rye killed, and I didn't know when I was gonna have a chance to spray dicamba, so I just sprayed Roundup out there to kill the rye. So this is my tramline row that I drive down with the sprayer, and it's 26 inches wide. So I got a 60-foot planter, 120-foot sprayer, and I run down these rows. That's where the tractor, the planter, and the sprayer all drive in the same spot there. So then this is spraying the broadcast stuff. There's beans in there too. Can't see them very well, but they're there. This is 7 days after I sprayed. That rye started browning up. This was 13 days later, and that rye is just completely brown. And there's the beans working their way through. This is what the field looked like from a drone. You can see it looks really brown, you know, and the fields next to it are pretty green. So it takes just a little while for the rye to start melting down before the beans come through and take over. There's some good pictures to see all that extra biomass. And yeah, one of the main reasons I was wanting to do this is to build soil organic matter and soil carbon. You know, I'm trying to not do tillage, so another way to break up the soil. And this is middle of July. The beans are pretty much all taken over. You can still see a little bit of the, you know, the rye residue still that left, but looks pretty normal from the road. And then this is right before harvest. You can see there's still rye there. Still some extra material going through the combine, but didn't have any problems with any kind of plugging up. That rye residue is so fragile, it just kind of falls apart when the sickle hits it or runs through the combine. So the yield was not the best, but it's not the fault of the rye. I didn't have any side-by-side of what I planted with the planter, but I had a little side-by-side in the broadcast stuff, and you couldn't see any difference in the yield map, and when you sort through it by region, you couldn't pick out a yield difference. So it was in the 50s, but so was all the other stuff I had around there that didn't have the rye on it. That was just because the rain shut off. You know, at the end of the year, we just didn't get the rain. So in summary, I would say it's a success for what I was planning on doing. Just seeing them all grow together, experimenting with the rye growing, and so this next year I think I got 400 acres of rye planted this year through various things, and I've got some that's in ground that's gonna be corn next year, so we'll see how that goes. Some side-by-side stuff and just all different kinds of stuff going on. So this is my first video, so I think I'm gonna try to make more kind of through this next year. So if you want to keep following along and see what happens, I'm working on drilling a well right now. We're gonna do another well, maybe try some irrigation, all different kinds of stuff we got going on, a bunch of shop projects. I think I'm gonna start getting videos of that and just showing you guys what I do.